It's October, and I thought I should share some of my favorite pieces of entertainment for the month of October. To start off, let's start with some of my favorite horror movies. The first one I would recommend is a low-budget horror film from the 80s, being Basket Case by Frank Henenlotter. This was a pretty fun horror movie, from the creature design to the goofy acting. There's nothing I just don't love about this movie. Everything about it is just great and fun to watch. The film really does know its limitations, how the budget was very minuscule, taking place mostly inside of this hotel, motel, whatever it is, and just the creature effects being very good for the time being. And speaking of the creature, Belial is just one of the best sort of horror creatures, in my opinion. How it's just like a small little blob that was attached to this person, and the way him just moves is just hilarious. Just the stop motion of it is just so clunky, and it just makes everything so funny and enjoyable to watch. The film surprisingly had two other sequels after it, but the first one is obviously the best one, in my opinion. This film was pretty easy to find, so I recommend everyone just go out and check it out. Grab a bunch of friends, have a beer, and just have a great time with it. The next film I'd like to recommend is Blind Faith from 1989, directed by Dean Wilson. Now this is a deviation from Basket Case, as it's much lower on the budget scale, being shot entirely on VHS, which is an interesting choice. Now what I love about this and most VHS movies is the fact that they're dealing with their limitations and the budget is so small they have to resort to VHS. And there's something charming about shooting on VHS. These people just want to make a movie but don't have the budget, so they said, hey, let's just get a home video camera and just make it. And having this movie being based off an actual serial killer is a pretty interesting choice, as most VHS movies of this nature don't really go for that true story aspect to it. Most just go with the silly creature feature that you see a lot. But this one is generally surprising. It's not good by any means, it's not the best thing, but I had a lot of fun with this, and it's a good horror movie, like I said with Basket Case, to just put on when you have a ton of friends over and just have a good time with it. Now the last movie I'm going to recommend today is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer by John McNaughton, and it is probably one of my most favorite horror movies of all time. It's definitely up at the top 5 or 10. The film takes place in Chicago and is about a serial killer going on a crime spree, who is played by then nobody Michael Rooker, who is now in most, if not all, of James Gunn's movies. And a little fun fact about this movie, this, along with a couple others, is why we have an NC-17 rating. So, the more you know. But there's so much to praise about this movie, just the way the story is told, the low-budget nature adding to the horror aspect of it. Just this entire movie feels like a lost videotape that someone just found somewhere in an attic or in an old house. The kills are gory as hell, the intro just completely sells the movie, just having slow camera pans showing the aftermath of the serial killer's doings. This film fundamentally is just almost perfect on every level. Almost every year I go back to it and just am amazed by it and just love every second of it. I just can't stop watching it. This is something that I think everyone should see. It is a must-watch of horror fans out there. To switch gears, I'd like to talk about a couple albums that I like listening to in the month of October. Something very, spooky and gothy about this season. Just makes me want to listen to stuff similar to that. The first I'd like to recommend is Typo Negative. They're a fun goth metal band that I've gone into about last year, and they've been just in my rotation ever since. They have some of the most best written songs, even if they are a bit long. But the albums they made in the 90s are some of the best they've ever done, specifically Bloody Kisses through World Coming Down. Those are just some of the best goth metal albums I've listened to, and probably the most defining ones of their genre. I remember even as a young child not hearing, Black Number One every time I walked into a Hot Topic. Everything Dies off of the album World Coming Down is another best one to listen to. Just go listen to the entire discography. They're a great band to listen to, especially Bloody Kisses, October Rust, and World Coming Down. Those are the main 3 to listen to. Going further down the metal hole, I like to talk about black metal. Black metal is such a unique genre, and at the time when they emerged, they were just such a lo-fi, awful sounding albums that you couldn't look away from. And if you listen to black metal now like Cradle of Filth, and you go way back in 1994 or 3 and listen to an early Mayhem demo, you're gonna be like, this is entirely different. These two things can't be the same genre. Some of the bands I like to recommend are early Mayhem, early Dark Throne, early Emperor. Those are the greats. The one I would personally recommend is probably the first to get an album out, if I'm correct on that, and that is Dark Throne. They're probably one of the best in the genre. The albums I would recommend from them is A Blaze in the Northern Sky and Transylvania Hunger. Two very quite different sounding albums. The first one is very Sounds a bit more professional than Transylvania Hunger. Transylvania Hunger just seems like they just recorded through a cassette player and just ran that over like 20 times. The opening of each album really kick into high gear, that being Transylvania Hunger and Cartharian Life Code, and they just completely set the stage of what black metal is before, bands like Mayhem, Emperor, and Burzum really like shaped it to like different molds and stuff, made it more either atmospheric, either more bleak and heavy, or even more progressive, like Emperor did. Like, I would rate both these albums over Mayhem's De Mysterious Dom Satanas, even though that is a fantastic black metal record in and of itself. The last one I like to recommend is The Cure's Pornography. Just what is there to say about it? It is a fantastic record. It is the darkest album. A lot of themes of just depression and all that. It's a beautiful record. Songs like Cold, 100 Years, Hanging Guarding. The Cure are just a fantastic band in general. Their goth sensibility, being able to do stuff that's either way into like the poppy sort of aspect of their music to the very dark and depressing. And Pornography is just their best album in my opinion. Aside from Disintegration, Pornography I would rank number one. Just the way the songs are structured, the instrumentation, the lyrics, they're all just fantastic and beautiful. This dark, brooding music with these beautiful, like, rich lyrics. It's just like, oh, it's harmony. It really is harmony. Like, even though I'm recommending this for October, this is just an album I could listen to in any month, at any day, at any hour. It is fantastic and beautiful, and everyone should at least listen to it at least once, twice, heck, listen to it for the rest of your life. Now, the last piece of media I'm going to talk about are video games, some of my favorite horror games and stuff that I like to play during the month of October. And to start that off, I'd like to discuss Silent Hill 1 and 2. I haven't played 3 yet, but I assume that one is great too. These two games should be the foundation of what a horror game should be. Atmosphere, story, gameplay, all of it mixes very well into this deeply disturbing game that is sometimes scary at points and even terrifying to even play. Especially with Silent Hill 2, whose legacy is still continuing to this day, as a recent remake has been made. If anything, I prefer Silent Hill 2 over 1, just given the story and the gameplay is just much better and I feel more personally attached to it. The first one still has its merits and is still a great game and even is scary if you play in the right condition. The next set of games are very indie, with one coming from the studio called Public Combo, who makes great horror games in the style of a PS1 game. One of the ones I'm most interested in is Nun Massacre. The Nun Massacre is pretty straightforward. Go through corridors, find the right keys, unlock the right locks, and then, get to the end of the game. The thing that makes this scary is just the claustrophobic feel of it. You're in this, like, abandoned sort of, like, orphanage or hospital, and you're being chased by this nun, and just looking around every corner, and then, like, out of nowhere, she could just pop out and just scream at you, and it's the most terrifying thing ever. The first time I played, I jumped out of my seat, literally. It was completely caught me off guard and was scary. And the other one I want to talk about is Cannibal Abduction, which I have replayed so many times because it's just a fantastic horror game in, again, similar styles like a PS1 game, or maybe even PS2. If anything, the gameplay is closely related to like Resident Evil with the isometric camera in like a certain position as you're like walking through this small house. And you're just trying to escape the house, really, but like you're hunted by this crazed killer, which is scary in itself, but like when you add the VHS effects and just like the random jump of the noise of the music cues in, it's just completely terrifying. Just like it literally gets my heart racing. I'm just like, I need to get out of here. This is terrifying me. I need to go away. You can find these games on Steam and on PlayStation. It's very cheap, so it's easily accessible, and you just play it, and it's just very fun. It doesn't take that much space, so I recommend just getting it. And the last game I want to recommend is not the sort of horror, but it has horror elements and more like action-y, and that's the game Dark Watch. Now, this was one of my favorite games growing up, as it mixes both Western and vampires, which, just from that alone, I'm just like, hey, that's a selling point. I'm gonna just take my money. Like, you're going throughout this game as a vampiric sheriff trying to defeat this, like, vampire warlord or leader, and you're constantly coming across this, like, undead and just, like, these grotesque vampires, I want to say? They're mainly undead, but, like, I guess you could say they're vampires because they're controlled by one. But the game is so much fun. The combat, I love. The ability to use different, like, vampiric powers if you do something good or something bad. You can have a different playthrough, Each level is memorable and it stands out, and the variety of weapons you are given is such a fun and a blast to play. I haven't had this much fun getting back to a game in a long time, and it's so refreshing playing it at this stage. I just can't get enough of it. It's such a fun game to play, and I think we're gonna play it after this. So yeah, those are some of the pieces of media and entertainment I like to do during the month of October, and I'd like to know what you guys like to play, watch, or listen to during the month of October. That's about it. Thank you for stopping by. Bye.